about automating FrameMaker. And of course, doing that is, well, I do this for fun. Well, I make some money on the side, but I don't really do this for saving time and money. That's what you guys are supposed to use it for. My name is Jang Graat. There's a whole bunch of stuff about me. You know, the most important stuff you need to know is my middle names. They are actually... Parents knew that I was going to do FrameMaker was born. I'm using ExtendScript Toolkit. On the previous slide you saw I have 30 years of experience in tech writing, so I actually have been a tech writer. That got too boring, so I taught myself programming. I've been using FrameMaker for more than 20 years. I've been doing Data for more than 10 years. And now the only thing I do is scripting. Scripting not just but also using the XSLT, because nowadays if you have any technical content that is not yet XML, and if you have XML and it's not yet data, then you are not living in our XMillennium, right? This is the XMillennium since the 21st century, and if you have technical content, you have to use data. There's really no other choice. And believe me, you know, I studied philosophy. I'm strong on concepts. Data is the best thing that happened to technical content ever. So, okay. That aside, I'm using XSLT and ExtendScript, and the combination of that and all of those things are available in FrameMaker without installing anything extra. So that is a big plus. There's more to FrameMaker than you will ever see, probably. There's a lot of libraries in there, but the most important ones are you have a scripting environment and you have XSLT. So with the combination of these, you can do basically, well, you can make FrameMaker fry an egg for you in the morning for breakfast. Almost. Not quite. So I've been doing scripting for about 10 years. Even before ExtendScript was put into FrameMaker, there was another third-party product, but then when it was included in FrameMaker, I quickly jumped to using ExtendScript. You don't need Visual Studio, you don't need C++ knowledge or .NET kind of, you know, stuff that changes every year. Has anybody worked with Visual Studio? Have you had the same environment for 10 years? No, because at least 2 years, they change everything and you have to recode your whole stuff. With scripting, you don't. I have scripts here that I'm going to show you that I created 5 years ago. They're still working with the newest version of FrameMaker, right? So that's a big plus, and also you don't need to install scripts. In the beginning, I was putting everything in the program folder, and then my customers, you know, there's 2 technical authors in a large organization, and they want to put the script that they have paid for, that is very useful for them, that saves them time and money, they want to put it in the program folder. Their IT department says, no, that's our domain, you cannot write there. And we have to check the script, as if they know anything about FrameMaker, right? So I don't do that anymore. I put everything in the local directory of the user, and it always works. No need for installation, no need for approval from IT, etc. You can basically just automate FrameMaker without having to do anything with the IT department. So ExtendScript is basically the same as JavaScript. It's not exactly the same. It's based on the same ancestor in scripting languages. You can treat it like JavaScript. I actually have used a number of JavaScript libraries that I took off the web, and I put them in my FrameMaker environment, and hey, they happen to work, right? But most of those web-based JavaScript libraries that you can find, open source, etc., are just totally horrible, because those cool whiz kids, they think it's cool to write everything in one single line. And they don't use regular variable names, just like, you know, they shorten it. It's total chaos. So usually you cannot use them. And what I tell people is, you know, write manageable code. So you can make it as complex as you want. You should not do this, but you can. You know, you can use all the tricks in the book or outside the book of JavaScript. Now, the most important thing is not knowing JavaScript. If you have somebody who knows, if you have done JavaScript and you haven't done FrameMaker extend script, then okay, you know the grammar, but you don't know anything else. You don't know the object model. There's so much in FrameMaker. FrameMaker has a scripting reference that is more than 1,000 pages. And that is closely packed information about all those objects in the FrameMaker product that have lots and lots of properties, lots of methods, and those are the ones that have to work together to do what you need it to do, right? So it's the knowledge of the FrameMaker object model is your biggest asset, and that is going to take time. I've had customers who asked me after I created some script, they said, yeah, you know what, we want to have our own people manage it. So can you just give us a 2-day workshop? Because this guy already knows JavaScript. He's a very experienced JavaScripter, right? So can you do a 2-day workshop so that they can do the maintenance and they can also do some scripting? I said, if you change it to 2 months, maybe. Right? Because there's so much knowledge about FrameMaker that you need to get if you want to get to the level where I am, where I just make FrameMaker jump through burning hoops, right? It is not that easy. It is doable. The most important concept that you have to learn about is how all of those objects, all of those things that are under the hood in FrameMaker, you might just see a document, but there's so much in the background that is going on. Most of that is organized in so-called linked lists. So if you look at at this screen, if you start with a paragraph is in a number of linked lists. It might be in a list of all the paragraphs in a text flow, but it might also be in a cell, in a table cell, which is a different kind of list. And it has a certain format, which is again a linked list of formats, etc. So you don't need to memorize this, or this is just a starting point. Like this is just indicating like there's lots and lots of pointers to all kinds of objects, all kinds of methods, all kinds of properties that you will need to figure out. So the first number of maybe weeks or months that you want to do something fairly simple is going to be hard. It's going to be painful. I'm going to show you a couple of resources later on that you can use to help you through those first couple of painful weeks. Before we dig into a little bit of code, I'm going to show you a little bit of code. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to show you just to give you a basic idea of, okay, this is humanly possible to do, right, without going completely crazy. And then I'm going to show you a couple of demos of what can be achieved with scripting. So what I do is I didn't study computer science. You've seen on the first slide I started studying physics, no programming. Well, I did some programming that was with punch cards. I'm that old, right? So you had these punch cards, holes in it, and you bring it to the desk. Next morning you get this printout of the result of the program. That was programming those days. You almost had to, well, we had a machine putting the holes in it, but you almost had to, put punch like that, and then that was programming, right? Then I studied psychology and philosophy. There's no programming in that. So I taught myself programming after I got bored of tech writing. It was just too easy to write a good manual. Then I got into programming because some things can be done more efficiently. And so this is all self-taught. And maybe this is taught at the university, maybe not, I don't care. I'm using naming conventions in JavaScript. Everything, in JavaScript there is no data type, so you don't have like a variable, like an integer or a double or a float or whatever, or a string. You just have a variable name. And to help you figure out what you're dealing with in your own code, I'm using strict naming conventions. Like if it's a string, I put a lowercase s in front of it, in front of the name, so that I remind myself that, oh, this is a string. If I assign an integer to it, it will become an integer. I shouldn't do that. So this is just helping myself to keep the code correct. So integer is with a lowercase I, and an object is lowercase o, and an SA is a string array. You know, it is really, really straightforward, simple, something that I can understand, right? And it works. So this is the style of JavaScript that you see on the web very often. You know, everything is in just one line because, oh, it's so efficient, right? But if you do this, and then one of those objects in that chain, or one of those properties in that chain is not valid, then FrameMaker will just, or the toolkit will just say, undefined is not an object, and you don't know which of those things has broken the chain. So don't do this, just chop it up into pieces. Just assign, variable odoc equals app active doc. And then you go one level deeper, and then one level deeper, et cetera, to find what you need to find. And then that brings us to the next point. This is the most important point of any scripting at all. The most important part of your script is not the functional thing that does what you need it to do. The most important part of your script is checking all the possible errors that might ever occur on this planet and making sure that you don't crash because of them. Even if you know that this will never happen, like, I know I always have a document. Well, maybe not, right? So maybe something has happened that has closed the document, some other plugin, whatever, has closed the document, and I cannot rely on the document being there. So you always have to check everything. If I estimate the number, the amount of time that I use for creating solutions, it's about 2%, sometimes a little bit more if it's a complex problem. 2% is getting the idea, the bright idea, like, oh yeah, this is how I can solve it. That's the fun part, the 2%. That's the philosopher thinking about the world is trying to go, oh, you know what? If I just assume that the world is round, look at what I can do. I can sail that way and then come back that way. Wow, that's the 2%. Then you have about 20% is the actual coding, actually writing the code. And then some 70-something% is catching the errors. So it's a tedious job, but you have to do it. Otherwise, if you write the amount of code that I'm writing, usually like tens of thousands of lines of code, you have to be you have to be religious about checking all the possible errors that might occur. I'm not religious in any way, but on this I am. And on the naming conventions. Use white space and indentation. If you see any kind of code that you grab from the web, it's all over the place, right? I use white space, indentation. I never put the curly bracket at the end of the if clause, which you can do. I always put it in the front because this allows me to very quickly see, oh, there's a structural error in my logic, in my program logic. I mean, it's so simple, and white space doesn't cost much. It adds more lines to your code. So that might be an advantage if you say to your customer, if you do this for a customer, you say, I wrote 10,000 lines of code today. They go like, oh, wow. Declare all your variables. You can just assign a value to a name, and JavaScript is very helpful. They say, oh, this variable doesn't exist. Oh, you know what? We'll create one. So if you have made a typo, that is a problem. So, there's no checking like, oh, that variable doesn't exist yet. So let me tell the scripter like, hey, you haven't declared this variable. There's no checking there, so you got to be careful about this. But do declare your variables, because then you can see them in the data browser, etc. Then you can debug, etc. That's just helping you to debug your code. Avoid conflicting globals. This is a fairly technical issue. We can skip that. And well, this is what I do. I just create one object which is visible globally in FrameMaker, and that's where all of my code is. if I start with a global object that says this is my document, and in another script, like somebody else has written the script, and it's also active, and they also use the same name, because guess what? If they all use the same naming convention, then the object, the document, is going to be ODoc. If that's a global object, then the other one will overwrite yours, and you have all kinds of problems with it. So that's another thing to look at. So this is as technical as we're going to get. So I'm going to go into my scripting environment and show you what this really looks like, because I see some eyes glazing over, like, oh, what is this kind of thing? I'm going to do something. I'm going to show you a fictional task that I have. I just invented some kind of task for myself. I have this book with a number of chapters, and the chapters, this is a well-known story, Alice in Wonderland. I chose this because if I do some kind of technical manual, then some of you will say, yeah, but we do things differently, and you might think it doesn't apply to you, right? This applies to everyone. What I have here is I have all the chapters. I just grabbed the text off the internet, which is in the public domain, and I have this book, and all the text is there, and all the images are there, and I'm pretty proud of myself. I wrote this book, right? But now the marketing guy comes in and says, you should have used a style guide, because we don't use this font. In our company, we use a different font, right? Now, fortunately, I'm using paragraph styles, so not everything is normal or body. Like, I've seen so many companies where everybody writes in Word and everything is normal, and they manually change the font and the font size and italic, etc. for every single paragraph. They must have such an easy job because they have no challenges, right? They have so much time on their hands. They do this all manually. If you are doing that, you don't have to raise your hand that you're doing that now, etc. But go change your job. Go find another job, because you're not, you should be using paragraph styles. I use paragraph styles. So this means if I change this paragraph style, if I open the paragraph designer and I go, okay, well, you want another font, so let's choose another font. Let's just make this whatever it is, and apply, and I'm looking at this, and yeah, this looks good, right? Now to change the paragraph style, I can click update all, and then I'm good, but only for this document, because the other documents still have the other style. So what you would need to do now is you save this document. This is chapter 1, and then in the book you select all of the chapters, and then you go to the file menu, and you go to import, and then you go to not element definition, sorry. See, that's what you get when you get tedious tasks. You import, and then formats, and then you choose chapter 1, and then you click import, and then it imports it into all of those chapters. Okay, so that seems like not a very hard thing to do, but still, it's like a whole bunch of mouse clicks that you have to do, and that can be so much easier. So let's change this into something else again, because then you can see the actual change. Let's use Verdana or whatever, like this, update. And in my extend script environment, I can write a simple script that handles all of this importing into all the elements in my book. So I'm going to go to the workshop, to the scripts here, and then I have book functions, and in these book functions I have import formats. So this is something that if I run this script, if I do this, click there, and I run this script, then I have to call that function SID. SID is Smart Information Design is my company. Process book. And then import formats like this. And then it will work through, well, it will first present me with which template do you want to use for the formats. So I'm going to use chapter 1, and I click select, and there you go, it's done, right? So my script opens all the files if they're not open yet. If they're already open, it doesn't have to open them first. So it checks if the file is open. If it's not open, it opens the file invisibly in the background, so it doesn't, flash on your screen all the time and take up a lot of time. Then it imports the formats. If it was already open, it doesn't save it because you might be testing. And if it was not open, it has opened it, imports the format, saves it, closes it, and then takes the next file. All of that, and it's really a matter of seconds where it does this. You can add this to the menu as well. It's a very simple method to add a command to the menu. So you have a menu and you say, okay, import formats, there you go. Right? Your template might be somewhere else. You can set a default template. It really makes your life a lot easier. There's a couple more things that I have been doing here, and I'm just going to show you the end result of one of those scripts. So importing formats is not a really long job to do. But if you want to change all of the images in all of the files in your book, that is taking a long time. These images are way too big. So what I want to do is I want to scale them down. Then I want to have them run into paragraphs, so they're on the side of the paragraph, but I want to have to alternate them, so one here, one there. So all of that, if I go into my my library here, I have a function here. So this function will do that, and if I run it on this file, then you see that all of those images are downscaled by 50%, and they are alternating in position. So that's something that normally that would take you a lot longer, and this actually works for the entire book as well. Okay, I'm going to leave this document for what it is, just showing you that you have this option to do all kinds of automated, tedious tasks on every file or every graphic in the book. That's very nice. But there's a couple more things that I want to show you just really quickly. We had in the first presentation we talked about SVG, right? That you hand your graphics to your graphics designer who works in Illustrator, because they can create SVGs. And the only thing you really want to do is you create callouts. You have a screenshot as PNG or something, and then you want to put some callouts on it, you want to put some arrows on it, stuff like that. So that is something that we can do much easier. That's this one. If I open this. This is a script that I developed a couple of years ago, where this is already an SVG. So you got this SVG from your Illustrator, from the technical Illustrator, and it has taken a long time before they got time to do it for you. And now you find that, okay, so yeah, air out and air in. I'm not satisfied with those texts. So can you change the text for us? So you have to go back to the technical Illustrator. They have to find the time in their busy calendar to do it for you, to just change text. And then they're not writers. So you ask them to change the text, it comes back and there's all kinds of typos in it because they can't write, right? You're the author, you can write, correct? Okay. So what you do is you just open the script that says edit SVG, and I must apologize, this is not yet optimized for the new FrameMaker 2019 with a high resolution screen on a Mac and that kind of stuff. So what I can do here is I have this air out, and I make it air outlet. and I have air in, and I make it air inlet, and I click on OK, and then I have edited my SVG, right? It looks really simple. It was quite a bit of work, but it works. I even have, there's a couple of layers in this SVG, and I might want to have the cover, the cover layer hidden so that I can see what is underneath at this particular point in my file. So I can just say, just hide the cover, and then you have this, right? So there's a bunch of other things that you can do, but let's say you do not have an SVG yet. So I'm going to skip the rest of the stuff because we don't have time for that. Let's say you don't have the SVG yet, and you don't want to go to your tech writer because, or tech illustrator, because they're always working on something supposedly more important than your work, right? Right? So I have imported my PNG. This is my screenshot. I can make those screenshots myself. Use Anton's stuff. You can snag it. You just have PNGs, right? Okay, but I want to put some kind of call out on this. That is what, that is part of my job. So I have the graphics toolbar here. And if I select, let's select an oval. I'm going to do something really silly. So don't take this as my level of, my quality level in tech writing. But I'm just going to do something very, very stupid. So let's do this. And then let's, okay, like this. And then maybe have a slightly bigger line like this. Okay, that looks good. Well, it looks kind of. And then I want to have a line. I want to have it to point to it. This is really, really, really horrible quality of tech writing that I'm doing right now, or information design, but just for the heck of it, let's just do it like this. And then you say, press here. Okay. So by now, if you're doing this in real life, then your manager has official permission from me to shoot you. This is not good information design. And then I go to my menu and I say, create SVG. There you go, I got an SVG. Was that cool or what? Do you ever need the technical illustrator anymore? No, you don't. Yeah, oh yeah. Not for these stupid kind of jobs, right? Let them do the intelligent stuff, because you don't like to do this kind of stupid stuff. And as I said before, they cannot write, so they bring it back to you, and there's lots and lots of typos in it. So if it's SVG, then you can edit that within FrameMaker using my little plugin. Okay, I see I have 2 minutes left, so one more thing that I want to show you. Enough about SVG. I've been working through Julian's presentation to get this old demo working again. Now, none of you will ever have data somewhere in the database, right? That you have to import into your documents. Well, I did. So this is a CSV file. FrameMaker can import all kinds of data. So CSV file, you can have an Excel sheet, you export it to CSV, and then you put it into FrameMaker, and then this is your data. So if the data changes, you update this, and it's all fine and good. But what if I only want to have one field, like the price here, of this element in my text? I have to type it up. And there's one thing that I learned. I even wrote a song about it, the Dida song, no copy, no paste. It's to the tune of Bob Marley. No copy, no paste. No, little writer, don't touch those keys. No copy, no paste. So you don't copy paste. If I see some tech writers' fingers hovering over the Control-C key, I cut them off. You don't copy paste. So everything is good in the world with data, because people are using conrefs, etc., and they don't do copy paste. But if they want to put data in there, guess what? They're copy pasting, because they look up the data in the database and they punch it in. That's copy paste, right? Instead of that, what I have here, this is structured content, and this is regardless of whether that's data or not. It works, right? So I have this data here, this data element here, and you see that there's a data about element. This is actually data. The data about points to the CSV file that I just created, the simple DB CSV file. So I know where the data source is. And this actual data element has a key ref that says R2. It's not R2D2, but, well, I could have done R2D2, right? That would have been nice. Maybe next time. So this is R2C4. So in Excel terms, it's row 2, column 4. That's the data item I want to have in here. So if I have this, and I'm going to overrun just 3 minutes. So here I have my row 2. Which one is it? That's this one, right? You know what? I think I have to do this and then I will. So here we have this data item. I think this is row 1, column 4. So that's this one. You see the one above, that was row 2, column 4. So if I change this into 215, in my data source, so in my CSV file, of course you can do it in your data source and regenerate the CSV file. And then I go to my menu here and I go to read CSV data, then you see that this is now changed. Now let's say you're a tech writer and you own the document, the information, and you say, no, this is wrong, this is all wrong, this should be 309. You know, the prices it's just gone up. And I save this file, and then I'm going to go to this menu and I say write CSV data. And I go into my notepad where I see the data, and now notepad says, hey, your data has changed because now this has become 309. So actually I have a live link between my FrameMaker document and the data source. Now what I cannot show you at the moment because I didn't have time to make that work, I did actually create this with a CSV file, but you can use a live database connection using PHP and a MySQL database. I've done this with XML databases. You can do it with any kind of data that you like. You can make a live link in your database, in your document. You can also make this function called automatically when you open a document. So now you don't have to copy your data out of a database into your documentation anymore. You can make a live link out of it. All of this is done just based on a little bit of imagination and a lot of time spent on creating scripts. If you get into this, there's a couple of resources that you will need. There's the scripting guide, which is 1,000 pages or more of information. If that isn't enough, you can also go to the FrameMaker Development Kit reference guide, which is C++. You only need this because it has some kind of more details on some objects than the scripting guide, and basically the names are the same. And then there's the scripters forum where a bunch of us are always helping newbies, and we're kind to newbies. If you're too lazy, then you will get the remark like, read the fucking scripting guide, Okay. And then finally, if you have your scripts ready, you can put them in the automatic startup so that every time you start up FrameMaker, they will be active, they will be available. Just like the menus that I just created, they are in my automatic startup. So I always have those tools available when I start up FrameMaker. That was a short session for me. If you need any kind of further information, just talk to me during the breaks. This is my company name, Smart Information Design. Just come talk to me and then we'll see. Okay, Saibal.
I have a question on behalf of everyone. If I don't want to write any of these scripts, is there anywhere I can go and find scripts which are already written by experts? There's one thing that is very important, and it has been revamped over the past year, is the Adobe Partner Portal. So you go to the Partner Portal and you type in a bunch of keywords like what kind of services are you looking for, and are you looking for somebody local or not, etc. And then you will find a list of people who are
like me, I make money creating solutions for customers. You can go to the scripting forum and ask stuff there, and there's also a couple of people who are going to be there who can also offer their services. As I said in the beginning, finding somebody who knows JavaScript and thinking that will be the solution, that's not going to work, because the knowledge is mainly about the FrameMaker object model. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with a long time before you really get that experience. But so, first stop is the partner portal, where you will find people who know what they're, who do all kinds of different programming for FrameMaker. And then, and then if all of the others say, well, you can't do this in FrameMaker, drop me a line. There's nothing you cannot do in FrameMaker. And I'm addicted to challenge, so I need difficult problems. Okay? It's time for lunch, I think. Yeah? Thank you very much.